God, creator, redeemer, sustainer, help us to draw near now. Amen. Well, it's possible she came to the synagogue every Sunday, and having heard about the transforming power of Jesus, showed up that day hoping for a little something special. We don't know. But we know she was there. She was a woman of persistence, a woman who throughout her trials continued to return to the synagogue. This woman kept praying, kept believing. This woman had hope. She's a dreamer. She dreams of liberation, and Jesus offers it anytime and everywhere, including on the Sabbath. On the Sabbath, she was found and healed. On the Sabbath, she was saved. On the Sabbath, she was set free. Sabbath. The Sabbath is always about liberation. Her encounter with Jesus is the realization of that hope, and her response is transformative and immediate. She responds first to the teaching, which affirms and reaffirms again and again Jesus' central message. He, Jesus, has come to bring good news to the poor, to set the captives and oppressed free. And then to Jesus' specific words to and for her. Woman, you are free from your disability, even and especially on the Sabbath. What must that have felt like? If nothing else changed and all she did was stand up straight, we know the shifting, the expanding of her entire world. And Beyoncé's lyrics, In Mood Forever, encapsulates for me this moment. And I quote, I done leveled up, now my view panoramic. I done leveled up, now my view panoramic. And so while I was writing, I got up from my seat and I assumed a hunched over position and posture. And I kind of dreamed those words into my spirit as my spine lengthened and rose. And I was standing up straight, and my vision was different because before I was looking down and now I'm looking up and out. And I could see faces and people. And then I started looking around me, and I could see above and around. I could see everything. And so my world had done this incredible shift. And after 18 years, you'd better believe it, I was praising God. And after 18 years, I was free. Her healing was not from blindness per se, but we are absolutely talking about a level of visual impairment. And her experience of liberation, as her vision, her entire world expanded. In this story, the woman is healed of her affliction. She is made straight. And yet we know that not all healing is manifested in the physical realm. We know that. There's so much more we do not know. What this gospel story points to is the invitation to a sense of liberation and a shift in imagination and vision. An invitation to belonging, wholeness, thriving, freedom, divine liberation as a child of God. Sabbath. The Sabbath is always about liberation, and liberation means freedom to dream our way into our individual and collective positions in God's kingdom. Sabbath is for everyone. Shouldn't we be untied from our burdens, set free even on the Sabbath. Sabbath, Jesus seems to say, is the perfect time to be set free. And this woman has been invited into it. This new way of being and seeing, of living into new levels of freedom and possibility as she grew into her experience of the Sabbath. Sabbath would look different from that moment and on into the future. On the Sabbath, Jesus urges us away from oppressive systems and ways of understanding. He ultimately shocks us out of the old and into the dream of the new. On the Sabbath, Jesus heals and sets free. Jesus invites us into a world of possibility where we can stand straight, walk, and see. So I imagine the many ways she might have experienced oppression as a woman during ancient times. A woman with a seemingly incurable affliction, she is an outcast in her community, a prisoner of this particular war for 18 years. It meant she likely couldn't find employment and would have needed to depend on the community to care for her most basic needs. She would have been pitied, shunned for the assumption of some kind of sin in her life. But Jesus invited her to liberation, and she accepted, and now she's free. Thinking of her made me think about my mom as a young African-American woman in New York City in the early 1960s. Finding her way to the city from Alabama during the height of the civil rights movement meant my mother was a victim of overt racism and lived with it as a particular and specific stressor in her life. I thought back to what a sense of liberation looked like as I remembered it in her life. And so when I picture my mom at her rest and relaxed finest, she's wearing a slip and bra, her hair in curlers or braids, a cup of coffee in her hand, and after a week of single parenting and work, well, we aren't going anywhere. She's stepping away from the grind, and this ensemble is part of her resistance. So while Tricia Hersey, pictured at rest on today's bulletin, and others speak of their mothers closing their eyes for a moment, I see my mother with her eyes open. She's holding a well-worn copy of Ebony magazine, or then our holy grail for all things Black fashion and lifestyle and beauty, Essence magazine. My mother slipped away with words and pictures. She used this time to read and dream. Sabbath for her meant being free to daydream, being free to see the world perhaps as she hoped it would be. These images were her invitation and a form of liberation, one that pressed pause on the lived experience of racism, the stressors of societal exclusion and limitations on accessibility, to say nothing of the stresses of capitalism, the endless pursuit of production and a world that consistently diminished her beauty and value. The images in these magazines helped my mother see herself in the story of the good life. They helped liberate her mind and, like the crippled woman in our gospel, helped her rise up into different ways of seeing. I thought about this as I stopped by an ad recently touting a Florida vacation package featuring a Black couple on my way to work one morning. I thought about the increased frequency in which I see such advertisements. It was not so for my mother, who held on to these early copies of Black magazine publications as if they were some kind of holy text, and perhaps they were. In my lifetime, I've seen this kind of inclusion in marketing increase and see it as a God good thing. It means her children's children, and your children too, are inhabiting a different world. So it's pretty spectacular to know that lately the voice of liberation and rest, belongs to women on the margins, women of color, Black women, women whose mothers were only ever encouraged to keep going, to keep working, are leading these conversations. Women like Hersey and Dr. Thema Bryant all agree on the power of rest as resistance and offer Sabbath as the antidote to grind culture. They push us towards liberation, knowing that none of us are free unless we all are. Your healing, is never your own. Your healing shapes the world around you. And so we have this woman who'd been in sacred communication with God about her ailment for 18 years, and her story and voice, which have become central to the liberation of the marginalized, the minimized, the oppressed, the othered. She stood, saw, and praised God, and in doing so proclaimed the truth of her encounter with Jesus. Though nameless, she is the history-making subject of her own divine and sacred liberation. Her story helped heal her world, and it helps us as we believe for the restoration of our own. So it's true, we've all fallen victim to grind culture and the structures of dominance that remain to this day. The trinity of hard work, grit, and relentless drive have made even our churches places of domination and hierarchical systems. But Jesus invites us, shares and models liberation for us, even on the Sabbath. Never mind societal norms or our religious laws, his liberation is expressed even as he liberates others. So whether it's a crippled woman or a blind man or you and me and some of our third world problems, Jesus offers rest, recovery, healing in memory of creation and in memory of liberation. Our conversations about Sabbath and liberation must include Sabbath and the idea of liberation as it lands on all members of society. It's all well and good to suggest Sabbath, but not if we aren't looking around us to lift others into it. Jesus invited the woman into a sense of liberation through a healing miracle. For my mother, it was the potent medicine of seeing herself. People that looked like her in magazines that served as the invitation to even the tiniest fragment of freedom. Sabbath forces us to see injustice in our world, and it won't let us bypass it. It's agitating like that. And so, if you don't find yourself among those whose backs are against the wall, as Howard Thurman describes it, we'll join them in solidarity. The Bible teaches a generosity, an ethical, and inclusive space of sharing and rest as part of a Sabbath practice. That's it, point blank, period. So, absolutely, live into your liberation. Do that thing. But also share and encourage it, carry it, pay that sense of liberation forward. A way was and is made out of no way. That's just true, and that's how we do it. And so we have these examples of persistent, active faith, of pockets of reclaimed time and reading as imaginative escape. Perhaps the crippled woman found solace in the halls of the synagogue, a safe place to rest or be offered a meal. Today we say representation matters, and it did then too. With each turn of the page, my mother found the centering she needed. The images and text helped her dream herself free, journey in her mind beyond her world. Liberation for her meant, as Toni Morrison would say, dreaming the world as it ought to be. She would say, don't let anyone tell you otherwise. So, what about you? Can you take a moment to look back over your journey into the liberating path of Jesus? We'll just take a moment to center that, and I'll ask a few questions. So just begin with that question in your silence. Can you take a moment to just look back over your journey into the liberating path of Jesus? And what do you remember about it? How would you say you've been set free? Have you, because of your social location or grind culture at large, felt that Sabbath wasn't for you? That for whatever reason, you are not included in God's invitation? And what has that felt like? And how have you coped with it? Sabbath is always the invitation to liberation. And so it belongs to you. The only task is to invite others into it. Or is this area one of new awakenings for you? How have you expressed your freedom? Are you inviting others into it, or have you been invited? Have you been invited in? If you experienced or experimented with Sabbath this weekend, as our community has been instructed to do, or been invited to do, I'd like to take a little moment to talk about it. And so if you have anything to share with the community based on your experience of feeling free and liberated enough to even partake in the Sabbath, I'd love to hear a little bit about it. The floor is open for a few minutes. Corey? Oh, she's going to bring a mic to you.
So yesterday was our church Sabbath day. And throughout the week, we had one of our board members coming out to serve with us, and there was an opportunity for me to go out and work on the Sabbath day. And I just realized, I am just going to stick with the Sabbath. I am not going to take this invitation, which felt like it was probably needed, but not absolutely necessary. So I just trusted that, I asked one of my coworkers, hey, she's going to be out. Would you mind taking the photos that I would have done so that I can just hold on to this and trust that it will get done and it doesn't have to be me. So instead, I told Christine that I tripled the amount of movement that I usually do within one day. And I had one of the best Danishes I've ever had in my life. And I got to spend time with my wife.
Oh, Wonderful. That's wonderful. Amen. Anyone else? Amy. Amy.
Yeah, Lisha, you said inviting, have you been able to invite others in or be invited? And I have a good friend I haven't seen in months and months and months because of her work schedule. And she had this little, like 2 hours of time yesterday. And so I came into the city and she and I met up, bought some lunch, and then took it to another friend's house because we have to like pile up on her free time. So we invited others in, and 2 hours, maybe 3 hours, we really enjoyed each other. We were inviting each other in.
Amen. Amen. Oh, we have another one.
Yesterday, in observant of Sabbath, my husband and I left our house without our phones and without a destination. So we kind of ended up wandering throughout the city for a couple of hours. And it really just felt like our conversations were very intentional and we were very present and not distracted by any destination or anything from checking our phones. And even kind of finding our way around without a map it was a very intentional time together.
Awesome. Anyone else? Well, I will share something. The Saturday before preaching is always a work day, right? And I knew I was going to have to work. I tried to finish on Friday, but I was unable to. And so what I did was have these really sweet little intentional naps between writing. And it really felt good to actually like, okay, you're going to finish it, not feel like I got to grind it out and just complete it. Like I would work for a while and then I would just like, I'm taking a nap. And I did that throughout the day and it was restful. And I think I am arriving today feeling the benefits of those naps. So, amen. Hila's giving me the. So we'll just close with a moment of silence as we kind of continue thinking about this, right? Sabbath as liberation, right? Free to experience it and to invite others in.